I was talking to my 18-year-old grandson, and as you may recall in a earlier video, I mentioned how I detested video games because they were so violent. However, now that he's 18, he's free to do as he pleases, and one of the things that he finds pleasure in is the playing of these games. So, I prompted a discussion with him about it because I don't like to just hate on something and not, I mean, I know why I hate it, but I also try to have some type of understanding of the reason why people would do things that I find detestable. And so he was very excited and he told me, because he knows that I explore secret societies and so forth. And he's like, yo, Grandma, one of the games has the Yakuza. And I'm like, really? So, him knowing that I would know that this is a secret society, he thought it would interest me. And it did. In fact, it interests me so much that I decided to devote today's video to the actual story of the Yakuza. And so for those of you who have gained knowledge about this Japanese secret society via Grand Theft Auto, well, now you can hear the real facts behind the Yakuza. Thank you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. God bless you. And here we go. This one, hold on to your
So, what
seats.
is Yakuza? Well, the Yakuza is a name given to organized criminal gangs from Japan. The Yakuza is not a single organization, but rather a collection of separate gangs or clans. The Yakuza are Japan's organized crime syndicates, just like the triads in other parts of Asia, or the mafia, or even the Crips and the Bloods in the US. Now, in other in operations and social roles, the Yakuza are very different to these other criminal organizations. In fact, the Yakuza are almost mainstream. They have office buildings and their gossip is featured in the Japanese popular press. And these violent criminals have left their fingerprints on many aspects of Japanese life, from gambling and prostitution to the rackets to halls of high level political and financial power. The various gangs that make up the Yakuza have different origins, and the gangs' versions of these origins can be quite different from the historical record. And I say that to say, in their own vision of themselves, the Yakuza descend from honorable Robin Hood like characters who defended their villages from roaming bandits. Some even claim to trace their lineage to Ronin, who was a samurai warrior. Ronin was the collective name of samurai warriors who found themselves without masters following a period of political upheaval in 17th century Japan. Now, the largest Yakuza, the Yamaguchi Gumi, is Japan's largest Yakuza syndicate. Recently, it has been the target of sanctions by the U.S. government in a crackdown on organized crime. American citizens are no longer allowed to make transactions with the leader, Kenichi Shinoda. And he came in, just as a side note, he's number 7 on the list of the world's top crime bosses. Now, second in command is Kiyoshi Takayama, and he's also blacklisted here in the U.S., and the U.S. government has frozen all of their American assets. Both him and Shinoda's assets are frozen. The move follows laws in Japan aimed at severing the ties between Yakuza and legitimate businesses. Previous Japanese attempts to reduce the Yakuza have included introducing fines for businesses that were willingly associated with these gangsters. These efforts seem to be working, and membership is now at a 50-year low compared to earlier years when it was actually quite high, and the part-timers have begun to outnumber full-time members. So they're people who've got one foot in the gang and the other foot in some other type of legitimate business. Shinoda has spoken out on the issue, saying that getting rid of the gangs would leave thousands of dangerous, dispossessed criminals. Oh, don't you love it? And if the Yamaguchi Gumi were to be disbanded, public order would deteriorate immediately. Now, among their activities, the Yakuza also has scams, and one of them is called Sakaya, and it's the name of a form of large scale bribery practiced by the Yakuza. First, they will buy shares in a company, just enough to get them a place at the shareholders' meeting. Then they go, and incidentally, they don't go in as Yakuza, they go in as regular businessmen because they have money to buy their way into these companies. And then they go and they dig up as much dirt as they can on the company leadership. After that, it's a case of give us money or we'll come to the meeting and embarrass you. Now, one thing in particular with the Japanese is that they fear shame above everything else. So this tactic will work with them. Over here in America, the youth now, they have this thing that's very popular among them is ask me how many F's I give. So the consensus is that no matter what you do, people are not worried about it over here. They don't care if you shame them, slut shame them, call them out on the internet. And in the terms of these higher up companies, it's almost like a badge of honor if someone complains because they figure and they've got money enough to cover up whatever needs to be covered up. But in Japan, it's different. They don't even want the thing to come out. Forget covering it up. They don't want anything to cover up. So the peculiar thing about this scam is that it's carried out with the utmost politeness, and the threats are made in a roundabout way because they're payoffs. The Yakuza will host an event, a golf tournament or a beauty pageant, for example, and then they'll sell these overpriced tickets to the victims of the blackmail. Now, some of Japan, that's part of the Sakaya scam, whereby they're getting money out of these people to hold the secret. And this is also a Illuminati tactic as well. It's been long used by many secret societies where they'll gather information on a particular star or any person who's in bed with them. And if they don't play ball, then all of a sudden this thing comes out. And it's sometimes something that's been hidden for years. And all of a sudden you find out this person is a notorious rapist or they've killed someone in their past or some kind of dirty secret that's going to greatly change their fan base and their popularity. Now, some of Japan's largest companies have been targeted. One racketeer received 8 months in prison after targeting executives from Mitsubishi for illegitimate rent payments on a holiday home. In 1982, Sakaya had reached such endemic proportions that Japan introduced laws making it illegal for corporations to pay the blackmailers off. Unfortunately, the law didn't do that much, but make the Yakuza more sophisticated in hiding the scheme. So the police are prone to leaking secrets, and now reporting the Sakaya may result in the original blackmail information getting out there anyway. Remember, just like over here in the U.S., a lot of the Japanese police are on the payroll of the Yakuza. These company managers would also have to put up with the Yakuza out for revenge and possibly face prosecution if they have paid off Sakaya in the past. The most effective tactic so far has been to align shareholder meetings, as the gangsters can only be in so many places at once, and up to 90% of the corporations on the Tokyo Stock Exchange hold their annual shareholder meetings on the same day. So that's one way they're trying to outsmart the Yakuza because they know that, as I stated, they can only be in one place at one time. Giving back to the community. Now, in this picture, you can see people unloading supplies from a small ship in a devastated part of the island of Oshima. And this was when the Japanese tsunami hit in 2011. The Yakuza were among the first to head to the affected areas with aid. And this is not without precedent. In 1995, when the earthquake hit Kobe, Japan's fifth largest city, the Yakuza used scooters, boats, and a helicopter to deliver supplies around the clogged streets. So some people say the Yakuza help in times of need because they are made up of outcasts who sympathize with the people struggling to get by with no help from the authorities. But others are more cynical, suggesting that the moves are nothing but public relations. Now, as a side note, this helping the people, giving back to the community. Well, this is from gangsters. This is similar to what Bumpy Johnson and Frank Lucas did during their time as Harlem drug kingpins. Both Bumpy and Frank were known for giving out turkeys on the holidays, and people could go to Bumpy Johnson and get their rent paid, and Frank Lucas was known for handing out money on the streets to kids. And so, the Yakuza has maintained this practice as well. I would say overall, the reason that a lot of gangsters did this is because it's harder for police to get community support for a criminal enterprise crackdown following a great display of charity. The people love these people because they came back and they gave back, despite that they were killing people in the community. Now, there was also the potential for financial gains to be had for these respective organizations. A few months after the 2011 Japanese earthquake, the Yakuza organizations were vying for construction contracts from the government. So they had a agenda behind what they were doing. The scale of the disaster and the repair work that was required made it almost impossible for the police to keep the Yakuza out of the cleanup effort, and especially since they often operated the front companies, which were indistinguishable from legitimate businesses. One contract that found its way into the Yakuza was, it resulted in a jail term for the senior member behind it because he had been skimming funds and underpaying workers for profit. And so, this suggests that the critics of the Yakuza's charitable efforts are probably right. The infamous Yakuza tattoo. Now, one of the most iconic images of the Yakuza is this intricate full body tattoo art. And these, they use a traditional method of manually inserting ink under the skin, and that's known as irizumi. And they are seen as a mark of a person's bravery due to the pain that this method inflicts. In recent years, the number of non-Yakuza getting this style of tattoo has increased significantly. Popular designs include dragons, mountains, and even women. But despite this widening trend of tattoos among the non-Yakuza, the tattoo still carries a significant stigma within Japanese society. In fact, the mayor of Osaka instituted a ban on government workers with tattoos, telling them to either have it removed or leave and find a job in the private sector. Now, citizens fighting back. In 2013, a Japanese restaurant owner began the process of suing Kenichi Shinoda, the extremely dangerous head of Yamaguchi Gumi. And I had mentioned this earlier. It's one of the biggest gang factions within Yakuza. She claimed that Shinoda has employer's liability for gangsters that demanded protection money and threatened to burn down her bar if she didn't cough it up. She claimed damages of 17 million yen, which is about 2.8 million US. And she's not the first person to sue the Yakuza. In 2008, a group of residents sued to evict the Dojinkai gang from their headquarters in the city of Kurumi. The group had split following an argument over leadership, leading to a violent war between the two sides. The residents argued that they deserved to be able to live in peace, and so they wanted the gangs gone from the city. But the Yakuza aren't always on the receiving end either of a lawsuit. At the start of that same year, the Kudokai a Yakuza syndicate in the south of Japan, were labeled dangerous by law enforcement, and they had been linked to a series of grenade attacks on rival gangs. But their lawyer argued that by putting this label on them, it infringed on the group unfairly. And it also accused them of picking on this group when they were only one of the five gangs in the area. And so the suit was surrounded. It was based on a violation of the Japanese Constitution. So you can be a gangster, but if someone calls you that, then you're liable to a lawsuit because you're violating their rights. Go figure. Okay, are you fit to be Yakuza? Well, the Yamaguchi Gumi created a 12-page exam for its members. This move came after the government passed harsher laws against organized crime. So the exam was the group's attempt to keep its members from getting into trouble by making sure they knew the law. It covered topics from dumping industrial waste to vehicle theft, and while the thought of tattooed gangsters sitting in an examination hall after a day of cramming for this test may be amusing, the introduction of the test tells you a lot about Japan's economy as a whole, because the Yakuza have long been a barometer of the Japanese economy. If the gangsters are finding times difficult and doing what they do to minimize losses, then it means that everyone else is in the same position as well. So they had to hone up on these laws, and it was like studying for the bar exam. They had to know the law in order to become Yakuza. Okay, and in the case of those who already were, it was understood that they did know, what could go down and what couldn't go down. The initiation ritual. New recruits to the Yakuza are required to take a subservient role to one of the more experienced members. This is called kobun. Now, literally, it translates into child role. And over here in the U.S., we call it, it has a similar significance in terms of mentorships. And some of you familiar with the Illuminati also know it as handler or trainer, and the MK Ultra recruit. So it's a similar type of thing. The Yakuza have a very complex leadership structure, and there are many layers one must progress through to reach the top, similar to a lot of the secret societies here in the U.S. There are levels to it. Now, the initiation ritual for a new recruit is a ceremony based around sake, the white rice wine that they drink, and it's known as Sakazuki Goto. And the initiate sits opposite his oyabun, or father role, and while the drink is prepared by other members, the newcomer gets a smaller portion while his sponsor's cup is filled to the brim, and that is a reflection of their status. Each one drinks from their own cup before swapping and taking another drink, at which point the ceremony is complete. Now, this represents the creation of what is almost an adoptive father and son bond between the koban and the oyabun. Drinking of sake is a common ceremony to represent the creation of a bond in Japanese culture. Sake is seen as a bond between man and the gods, and it's formed from the blessing of a good harvest. And this is the same bond that cements the relationship between people. Couples sip sake at their weddings in Japan to represent their coming together. The historical link gives the Yakuza ceremony a religious significance, so it is often performed at a Japanese Shinto shrine. As a side note, whenever the Yakuza make an offense within the organization, they are required to mutilate themselves in the form of cutting off a pinky finger. And they cut off pieces of it starting at the top per offense until it's down to a nub. and then they have to move over to the other one, and that is the punishment for minor offenses. And this is interesting because it increased the popularity of finger prosthetics. So one particular maker of these finger prosthetics became rich as a result of so many of the Yakuza having cut off their fingers. So I thought you'd find that interesting. The Yakuza in politics. Now, this is something very similar to America. In 2012, Japan's Justice Minister Kishu Tanaka was forced to resign his post when it came to light that he had links to Yakuza. Now, yet having these links has not always been so damaging for Japanese politicians. In fact, the Liberal Democratic Party, which has ruled Japan for 54 of the last 58 years, has extensively documented links to the Yakuza. In fact, the first Prime Minister, Nobusuke Kishi, was heavily involved with the Yamaguchi Gumi. In 1971, he, along with other politicians, provided bail for a Yamaguchi Gumi leader convicted of murder. He also attended funerals and weddings of the Yakuza members. And Yakuza members operate as campaign workers and bodyguards during the elections. In addition to this, Yakuza gangs are able to guarantee a certain number of votes for their favorite candidate. So the chairman of a Yakuza gang another faction to this is that the chairman of a Yakuza gang in Kyoto boasted that he provided 30,000 votes to elect a particular government. Now, at least 4 other prime ministers have indeed been linked to the Yakuza, most notably Noboru Takeshita, who came to power in 1987. And facing harassment from far-right opponents prior to their election, he turned to Tokyo's largest Yakuza group. And actually, it's interesting because I guess they're the second largest. They're not the largest because the Yamaguchi Gumi are the largest. But the Inagawa Kai, this is how he got his 30,000 votes. He turned to them, and they made the problem go away. But it ultimately opened a can of worms that exposed just how comfortable Japan's ruling elite were with organized crime. So, that's the background on who the Yakuza are. I would say in a lot of ways, they're actually more organized than the U.S. organized crime, because they get to levels that I have yet to see U.S. organized crime reach. The only way that the organized crime over here can get in bed with politics is they have to be sought out, where these people in Japan, they push the door down and walk in. Okay. I think that pretty much covers the Yakuza for today. I look forward to your comments. And as always, I want to end with prayer. Oh, Lord, the video games. What can I say about that? Lord, it troubles me that the youth can find ways to indulge gangster fantasies through these games, because I've yet to hear of a game that promotes science or innovation, invention, or something that perhaps can be useful on a positive level. Most of these games involve some type of criminal activity. Lord, just the name alone, a Grand Theft Auto, that this is what it's promoting. And so I need you to enter the hearts of the game makers, that they might see that this trend can be counterproductive. I don't know what hours of gaming can do to a person, because I'm not a professional in that regard, in the study of the human mind. But I would imagine a constant diet of anything would begin to form a type of opinion and behavior in the person who keeps indulging within it. So, Lord, I pray for the youth who spend hours upon hours on playing these games, and they don't want to do anything else. They don't want to go out into the world. Some of them don't even want to find jobs. And I need you, Lord, to intervene and to snap them out of this so that they will know that there are other things in life besides sitting there with a remote playing that game. Lord, I pray for the people. I thank you. I thank you for the wisdom and the knowledge and the teachings, Lord. I thank you for the inspiration and the motivation, Lord. I thank you, as always, for the subscribers. I thank you for those who just pass by and check in, Lord. I thank you for my health, Lord. Thank you, thank you. And I bless you, and to you be all the glory in everything that I do. In the mighty, mighty name of Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen.